Hi, Nikki. Hope you're doing well. I have to say, I think you're doing a really good job in this class. You're turning things in on time. You're doing a creative job. You're following the instructions. So that's great to see. I think that's a good sign of your future success in the program, and then as a professional to do those simple things, but they're very important. Let's take a look at your first assignment for week one, and this one we're doing transmit light. I just wanted to mention you've done the assignment correctly, but I did want to clarify just so you understand that the subject of the assignment is actually the light itself. And what we're doing is you can make that more interesting by placing things in front of the light. And you've done that. You've placed the leaves in front of the light. You've placed, the peel, lemon peel, and the flowers. And so that's somewhat like the work that I'd shown as a demo. So that's great. That's fine. But just so you understand, the subject was the light itself, not the actual lemon for the assignment. Of course, when someone looks at that image, they'll see the lemon. But as a photographer, you were photographing the transmitted light that's coming through the lemon. So that's kind of the idea of it. All right, so these first images of the leaves, I think it's interesting. These are really almost studies of motion with the fluttering of the leaves. And I think they're sort of abstract images, so what you're looking at for selecting one of these would be one where there's interesting arrangement of shapes. I mean, that'd be the basic thing. It seems like you pretty much stayed in one place and refocused. You changed your exposure around a little bit and bracketed. That's fine. And then I notice in the next one you've darkened further. So you've played around mostly with exposure. I'd say probably moving the camera more might result in some interesting things too here, and then perhaps going toward the overexposure. So for example, this end, where you're letting the light really bleed through the leaves. I think these leaves are not as transparent as others might be, so trying to get that transparency. They're going the other way. So you went 4.5, perhaps slowing down the shutter speed, raising your ISO, that sort of thing. Could have led you in that direction. That was just one way to prove it. Then on the lemon, I think you did a nice job in framing this up and doing your exposures and so on. And it looks like you've added in either something's catching here. So either you've got another light source or using the reflector. I see that right here too. Or maybe it's just the edge sort of wrapping around. But what I do like about that is adds a nice little foreground background separation. So you see that little edge right there? And then of course the larger edge right here, that really helps to make the whole lemon stand out. The other thing that could be done with this is the coming in closer, right, and photographing just a part of it. You may have been as close as you can get, so I don't know with your lens. This one is pretty interesting here, where you've taken a more angular point of view and made it darker, so we're seeing some more shapes in there. So I kind of like how that one came out, although it's a little bit on the dark side. And then here you took the flower, which is another good one. This one starts to get a little bit more about backlight and less about transmitted light, because we're not seeing the light through the flower as we are with the lemon. And here too, I think that you pretty much positioned and photographed, every single photograph's the same. I think in the last few, it looks like you turned the flower slightly. So here, one more variation you could have done is come in tighter, turn the flower each time, reposition the center. You see how you've got this right in the middle each time, that little, the center of the flower. So moving that to the side, coming in, tighter. Let's look at your final choices as a way of talking about that, I think. But good experimentation. So just summarize on the experimentation and sort of what you could do. The variations would be to vary your scale a bit each time. You varied the light very well with the lemon, so that was great. So, but with the other two, varying your camera angle and scale, how close you came to things. So for example, in the flower, if you came in, tight to something like that, that becomes a pretty interesting composition with the explosion of the petals out, and then we lose this edge where we see the shape of the flower itself. That's just an option you can do. It's a little bit, I would say that probably on this one you could have stopped down a little bit. It's f5.6. So you're shooting at 1/200th of a second. That's really high. I don't think that would be necessary with a tripod. So you could probably lower that down to, 1/30th with the tripod, and that would result in f11, f16. So you get more depth of field with your flower that way. So keep that in mind, that with flowers, they're actually pretty dimensional. They have like the front of the petal and then the back of the petal. So to get all that sharp, you need more depth of field, smaller aperture. Here in the lemon, you're in good shape because it's a very thin object, and so you're photographing this surface. It's a flat. You've made it more dimensional by the way you photographed it. This came out, I'd say this is your best image, even of the class. I think this one is really quite strong. It's very beautiful. That reflected light inside of it. You've turned this lemon into like a light itself, and I really like you've got a little bit of that edge of the light, just catching the edge of the lemon, and that has that's added more dimension to it. So we kind of a flat area, and then we've got this. So in this one, experimentation, a couple of things. I mean, I think you got a very symmetrical thing going. You could come in tighter to things. You can sort of make them off, do it off symmetry. Those are just options to experiment. This one I think came out good. These are a little bit distracting, the little hairs here. I'd say if you're going to put this in your portfolio, that I would retouch those things out. Of course, with assignment we're not doing that, but in your portfolio. All right, and this one is probably, I'd say, the least interesting. It was the best of your shots, I think, for sure, because you've got more sense of light streaming through. But with this type of image, you have to really experiment a lot with the shutter speed and with the your positioning of the leaves and the composition, that sort of thing. I think it's fine, and I don't see anything wrong with this image at all. The composition works out well. This pushing of these lines, a lot of diagonal lines being created because of the branches coming in, the bleeding of the light around the leaves it's attractive because it's that idea of sort of soft light, soft morning or evening light coming around. So I think a lot of positive things come out here. You need to be careful of the edge, that you don't lose your corners. So you can always adjust that in Lightroom later. We're not doing adjustments for the assignment, so we're fine, but just I'm noting that more for future use, to be careful not to lose the edge of things. All right, so thank you. That's it for my review. I think you've done a really nice job with the assignment. The improvement I see is just more variation when you do the shoot, in primarily not so much in your lighting, but variation in how you frame things up and then in scale. All right, looking forward to see what you do with the rest of the week.